Good morning, Bucknutters, and welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 on Wednesday, February 18th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle. It's Five-Star Wednesday here on the BM5, and we'll get to the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurelic, in a few moments to talk Buckeye recruiting. But as for the five-star running back on Ohio State's current roster, that being Ezekiel Elliott, he will have surgery on his left wrist this Friday. And when we say five-star running back, I'm not talking about his recruiting ranking coming out of high school. I'm talking about his current status as one of the elite players in all of college football. There's no doubt that if they were redoing the recruiting rankings of 2013, Ezekiel Elliott would be a five-star recruit, not a four-star. But I digress. Elliott fractured his wrist way back in August in preseason camp and had surgery just 2 weeks before the season opener against Navy. However, he never missed a game and ended up turning in one of the best seasons by a Buckeye running back in history with 1,878 yards. He averaged 6.9 yards per carry, scored 18 touchdowns, and saved his best for the postseason when he ran for nearly 700 yards in the 3 games against Wisconsin, Alabama, and Oregon combined. So despite not having use of one of his limbs all season, Zeke had one of the greatest individual seasons in Ohio State history. Elliott had hoped to avoid a second surgery on his left wrist, but he had an appointment with OSU's medical staff on Monday and learned a second surgery this Friday would be necessary. He's expected to be 100% for the start of preseason camp this year, but will likely miss all of spring, at least the contact drills. But Elliott has more than proved himself, to say the least, and as long as the wrist heals as expected, missing spring won't be a big deal for him at all. He just needs to get ready for the 2015 season, when he will certainly be on the short list of Heisman Trophy candidates. Now for the latest on the recruiting front, let's go out to who else? The Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurelic.
Today I have my five-star Ohio State recruiting report. That is, I want to talk about five-star prospects that have been connected to Ohio State 2016 recruiting. One, of course, is running back Kareem Walker, the country's #1 running back prospect. Walker committed to Ohio State on the day of the national championship game and then announced it at halftime of the national championship game. When Stan Drayton left the Buckeyes for the NFL Chicago Bears, there were some that worried that Kareem Walker might not end up in Ohio State's 2016 recruiting class. But once Tony Alford was hired by Urban Meyer, an absolutely spectacular hire by Urban, I think that pretty much took care of all the naysayers when it comes to Kareem Walker, and I do expect Kareem Walker to stay with his Ohio State commitment. I'm very, very confident that Walker will end up at Ohio State. I'm also confident that five-star defensive end Nick Bosa will end up at Ohio State. That's certainly not going out on a limb. Most people expect Bosa to end up at Ohio State. While Bosa says he is not ready to make a decision yet, I certainly feel that he will end up in the Buckeyes 2016 recruiting class. Offensive lineman Ben Bredesen from Wisconsin is another five-star prospect the Buckeyes are going after. Bredesen has Ohio State in his top 4, along with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Notre Dame. But I think this is going to be a very difficult one for the Buckeyes to win. In fact, I'll be surprised if Bredesen ends up at Ohio State. I certainly would never count Urban Meyer and his staff out as long as a prospect is still mentioning Ohio State. But in the end, I think that Bredesen will either end up at his home state, Wisconsin, or going to Michigan, where his brother is headed as a baseball player. Offensive lineman Gregory Little from Allen, Texas, is another outstanding prospect that the Buckeyes would love to land. Little is a Texas A&M commitment, but he says he will visit Ohio State, and certainly that gives the Buckeyes a shot. If they can get a prospect on campus, Urban Meyer and company have a chance. Right now, though, I will be surprised if Little does not stick with his Texas A&M commitment, but the Buckeyes will indeed get their shot, as Little is going to visit Ohio State. The fifth five-star prospect that I want to talk about is one that I think is going to be a very, very interesting recruiting battle. That is defensive tackle Rashawn Gary from New Jersey. Gary is a huge target of Ohio State. He also is a huge target of Michigan. Michigan's number one need for their 2016 recruiting class seems to be defensive tackles, and certainly Gary is the top one in the country. Gary, I think, could end up at Ohio State. He could end up at Michigan. He could end up at Alabama. He could really end up at a host of schools. I am not in the camp, as some are, that he is going to end up at Michigan because of connections there. I think the Buckeyes have a shot, as I think Alabama do, as well as others, and I think this is going to be a very interesting recruiting battle that Ohio State is going to wage at a very high level, and I absolutely feel the Buckeyes have a shot at landing Rashawn Gary. And on the site today, speaking of great prospects that the Buckeyes would like to sign, I'm featuring in-state linebacker Brendan Ferns from St. Clairsville, Ohio. Ferns is a huge Ohio State target, and I do like the Buckeyes' chances of landing Ferns, and certainly you want to check for my feature today on Bucknuts.com on Brendan Ferns.
Thank you, Bill. Great insights as always. Former Ohio State defensive end Vernon Gholston is attempting a comeback to the NFL. Gholston tweeted on Tuesday that he has a tryout upcoming with the Washington Redskins. Gholston was the number 6 overall pick of the 2008 NFL draft by the New York Jets, but only lasted 3 seasons in the league and never even recorded a sack. When they talk about all-time draft busts, you always hear Vernon Gholston's name brought up. Now, Vernon Gholston is still the single-season record holder for sacks at Ohio State, with 14 in 2007. Joey Bosa nearly broke that mark this past season, but fell a half sack short at 13.5 sacks. Anyway, good luck to Vernon in his tryout with the Redskins. He's a very nice guy, and we all wish him well. One final note, the NFL Combine began yesterday and will run all the way through Monday. 4 Buckeyes have been invited, including defensive tackle Michael Bennett, cornerback Duran Grant, tight end Jeff Hireman, and wide receiver Devin Smith. Hireman will do his testing and on-field workouts Thursday and Friday. Smith will have his testing and on-field workouts Friday and Saturday. Bennett will have his on Saturday and Sunday, and Grant will wrap up the proceedings with his testing and on-field workouts on Sunday and Monday. All of the action can be caught on NFL Network. Right now they're just doing the interview process, measurements, and things like that, so it'll be later in the week and then the weekend before the actual testing and the on-field workouts happen. As for where these Buckeyes will go in the draft, Smith will be the first player off the board, and many have him pegged as a first-round pick. He'll be an early second-rounder at the very worst. I think Michael Bennett will be a mid-second rounder. I think Duran Grant will be a third-rounder, and I think Jeff Hireman will be a fourth or fifth-rounder. As for the Buckeyes not invited to the Combine, I fully expect Darryl Baldwin, Curtis Grant, and Evan Spencer to be in someone's camp this summer with a chance to make a roster or a practice squad. Just look at last year. Andrew Norwell, Philly Brown, they weren't even drafted. They ended up being starters as rookies. So just because you're not drafted, just because you're not invited to the Combine doesn't mean your football career is over by any means. So good luck to those guys that weren't invited to the Combine, Darryl Baldwin, Curtis Grant, Evan Spencer, and the rest. And good luck to the 4 guys who were invited to the Combine. We're all rooting for you. Thanks again to the Dean of Ohio State Football Recruiting, Bill Kurelic, and thanks to you for tuning into the show. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Take it away, best damn band in the land.